The first step in any project is to plan your game. This is something that I do for every game, and it's probably the step that helps me stay on track and actually finish those projects. Now, within the planning phase, there's a few steps that you've got to do. It starts with, well, whether or not it's for a game jam or a longer term project. The project I'm going to cover today was for a game jam, which has a predefined period of time, so I had to finish this project within 24 hours. Now that's important because I had to cut some things at the end of the project that I may not have wanted to, and we'll see as that goes along what that looked like. But if you don't have that, if it's not for a game jam, then you want to discuss your ideal time frame and then maybe how you might adjust it. The next thing is your theme. This is specific to a game jam or not. If you have a theme that you want to introduce into a game or a mechanic that you think you can build a game around, then go for it. That's what I would do here. The theme for this game jam was clones, and so I had to consider that when I was making my game. And if you're not doing a game jam, then this would be the first step right here, the game genre. So if it's a first-person shooter, an RPG, a 2D or 3D, or even a puzzle game, this is where you might start. So I've got one game of each of these types already planned out, so you're going to want to subscribe for that content coming up where we build one of those games. I've already built one 2D game. This is my second 2D game we're talking about. I've done a 3D driving game also. And then once you get this far, you can actually start looking at things like the controller and kind of the tactical side of it all. The controller starts with some basic movement. So we're going to have, in this game, the character is going to be able to go up, down, left, and right. Just the basic movement of the character. That's pretty much it. The character is also going to be able to fire a weapon. Well, the character being a ship in this case is going to have a weapon that shoots. Now this is where I had to make some adjustments. There's only one weapon. There's no multiple weapons because of the time frame. And then as a third part of the controller, the character is going to have to, well, blow up and lose life. By a life counter. So there's going to be lives in the game where the player will then have 3, 4, 5 lives. You die, you lose 1, you go down to 4 or 2. What have you. Kind of makes sense, right? And then another component of this is that the background scrolls. The player doesn't move through the level like in the game I did called Touch and Die, where you actually ran through the level, or like Mario, for example. The background scrolls behind the player. And that's important to call out in this because if you get that wrong, it feels like the background's either going too fast or too slow for the game. And it can feel really off. So I'll show you how to assign speeds to those and make sure that feels right. And then of course we need some enemies. So in this case, I wanted to make an enemy prefab that would spawn an enemy ship with some variables that I could do to address like size and color and things. I never actually got to that. The enemy prefab is very basic, but I did finish the project in the 48 hours. I didn't want the enemies to be static. In other words, I didn't want to spawn them in very specific locations. I wanted them to spawn from a spawner to give it kind of that random element so where the player wouldn't always know where the enemies were coming from. So each level as you played it would be different. And then there's also a score. So of course, as you play the game, you build a score. Now this was also a theme of the game jam, but I still like to have elements in my games that make it feel like a game, like a score, like enemies, like shooting things and blowing things up. It's quite honestly just kind of some basic things to make it feel like you're actually playing a game. Now some of this stuff came from the asset store. This is the first step I take on a lot of my projects. I just visit the asset store and see if somebody's already built something that I can take advantage of and work into my project seamlessly. I love the asset store, it's terrific. For this project I picked up dynamic space backgrounds, which is the background images that end up scrolling through the level. There's a couple of them in this asset pack that I got for free, and it worked out perfectly for me to use those in my game. The next asset I used was 2D pixel spaceships. This was both the player character spaceship and the enemy spaceship. This also comes with a couple of bosses and some weapon extras that I never got around to using because of the time frame. But again, it's there if I wanted to. One thing I really wanted to do that I thought would be different than other people in this jam was introduce a story. So what I did was in between the scenes, I made scene breaks where a specific scene would load with just basically some text that would allow the player to just read through and get some context about what they were doing. And then something else that we're going to do is look at the miscellaneous things, sound effects and visual effects. Now this is a method of mine that I've been doing for the past 3 games. I don't like it. Where I'll go through and add the sound effects later. I'm going to start adding the sound effects as I build out the prefabs or the assets. Every time I've added the sound effects, it really slows the project down when I have to go in and listen to all of the music, the sound effects, everything. I do it all at once. I did that on this project also, and I think that is actually taking me more time than if I just grab the sound effect and add it to the prefab right when I'm building it. So that's a small change I'm going to make going forward. But I also added some visual effects once I got the game mechanics to actually work. I added some visual effects, and then that was the end of my project. This isn't the first time I've done a project breakdown. You can take a look at what I did for Touch and Die, my first 2D game. It's a very similar process, and then I make the game according to that. It helps me stay on task and get the project done. You can check out that video right here.